person to just want to live another second or a day or whatever.
Is that what got you through it? Because it is a dark place to be.
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, being suicidal, people think it's something that you can control. I mean, I wasn't always extremely open about it, but I would always get ridiculed. People would say like, oh my God, look at your life. What about your kids? How could you do that to them? And they truly don't understand. And I'm happy for anyone who don't understand. That's great, because you don't have that disease. That's beautiful. But the truth is, when you ask a person who's truly suicidal, like, oh, how could you do that to your kids? Well, our answer is, if I hurry up and pull this trigger, I don't have to worry about the pain that my kids are going to go through. So it's very, very sick when you think about it, because the thought doesn't prevent you, it actually spurs you on to hurry up and do it, because I'll have visual thoughts of my funeral and my kids being there and them being ripped apart about it. But it doesn't stop me. It makes me hurry up. Let me hurry up and end this part. So really ironic, and I'm going to leapfrog ahead because I know we're going to get to this. I just, like I said, I've never been happy in my skin. I've always hated myself. Every picture that you just seen up there, I could rip that picture apart and tell you what's wrong with it. That's just the way I am. Like I said, some very interesting things going on up in there. But even the greatest pose they say that ever was, the pose where I'm looking down, a lot of people say that's one of the most iconic photos. I can look at that picture and just destroy it. What's wrong with it? That's just the way I'm wired. So I've never been comfortable. And here I am, very much imperfect, and I feel perfect now. When this happened to me, and I know that was going to be one of your questions, how did it happen? I was going through pain for years, over 2 years before I lost my leg, and I'm still traveling around the world, and I'm going to all these doctors and these quacks. It's really sad if anybody really been sick when you discover that your doctors don't know crap. It's really humbling. It's like you just found out that there's no Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the tooth fairy is your mother putting a pillow on there, but doctors really don't know as much as they pretend they do. So here it is for 2 years. I'm going to every specialist you can imagine, having every scan and this, that, and the other. So me and my personal doctor become really close over this, and I'm angry with it now. I'm actually cussing, like, listen, man, we can do something more. At one time I went to the emergency room, they put a cast on my leg, and I'm like, what the, so I was actually supposed to go to the Arnold Classic, Australia, and I was arguing with my doctor that the pain was so extreme. Sometimes I could only take 1 or 2 steps without doubling over, just in tears from the pain. And I said, we got to do something more, man, these cracks. And he goes, Flex, we've done everything. Let's try an ultrasound. Let's try everything, man, So I go in and I get an ultrasound. And within 5 minutes, the technician, she just stops and she's staring at me. She's like, how do you feel? And I'm looking at her and tears have come out my eyes. I'm like, how do you think I feel? And her eyes get watery, and I'm like, can I see the scan? What do you see? She goes, no. Do you have a graft in your calf? So a graft, if you don't know, is a plastic tube that's substitute for an artery. I was like, no, I don't have a graft in my calf. I have a graft in this leg that goes to this leg for my kidney transplant. And I'll shorten the story. I kept asking her and she wouldn't answer. And at one point she literally started crying. So it doesn't take me much to cry. So now I'm crying, and I go, God, please tell me, what it is that you see. She goes, if you don't have a graft in your calf,
Thank you for sharing this with us, Flex.
She said, if you don't have a graft in your calf, then I'm looking at the biggest blood clot I ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. So at that time, she had to call an emergency team, and they called all my doctors, and she's like, you gotta stay here. We gotta call this in stat. And after about an hour, it's like, okay, your doctor's releasing, you need to go home immediately. So I'm driving home and I'm like just in a blank. I'm like, what just happened? And I get into my driveway and my phone rings and I answer it and my doctor's like, where are you? And I'm like, man, what was he yelling for? You know, I just pulled up in my garage. He's like, Flex, I'm shocked that you even made it home. So I'm like, what do you mean by that? It's like, you got a very bad, you know, blood clot, and we need to work on it immediately. We need to get you on blood thinners. So I'm like, Doc, listen, man, in 24 hours, I'm supposed to be flying to Australia. He's like, Flex, don't get on that flight. And I'm like, listen, Doc, I'm contracted to be in Australia for the Honor Classic. I'm like, they've already paid 15 grand for my ticket. And anybody in business, I'm like, I've already signed a contract. I've already received half my money. They're gonna sue my ass off if I don't show up. They're not gonna care about nothing. And he kept expressing to me, don't get on that flight. I go, no, it's okay, Doc. You know, the bed will let all the way down. You know, it's a pillow and a big blanket. You know, I'll lay down, I'll walk around. And so I'm not understanding. And he goes, all right, I get it, Flex, you're a hard hit. If you get on that flight, you're not getting off. That kind of grasp, and I'm like, you know, I'll think about it, because I'm still not, how do you believe that, right? How do you believe such news? I'm like, oh, you know, I'll think about it. And anyway, I walk upstairs and I can barely make it upstairs because I'm in so much pain and I'm just sobbing. And I start packing. I'm like, geez, man, how am I even gonna get to the airport? I can't even walk in my house. And I literally laid down. It was around 3 o'clock or so. I laid down and I passed out and I woke up, it was 10 o'clock. When I woke up, my entire leg was numb. My arm was completely numb on my right side. Even my private, everything was numb. Nothing really freaked me out until my junk was numb. And I was like, Doc, you know. So I called my doctor and I explained to him and he's like, get to the ER. I'm like, I'm not going back to them, man. I've been to those idiots twice. He goes, listen, just get to the ER and tell them you have a DVT. I'm on my way down there. I'm like, what's a DVT? And he goes, Flex, you just don't effing have time. You know, get down there now. Again, in my ignorance, lack of knowledge, I'm like, I'm gonna be there all day, man. It's 11 o'clock now. I know they're not gonna let me eat, so I stopped by Burger King on the way, you know, to the hospital. So I get there and I can't even get out of my car. I'm in so much pain, so they wheelchair me into the hospital and they check my blood pressure and it's 210/205. And that caught everyone's attention and they kept bringing nurses in, you know, they'd look at me, walk out, another nurse come in, check my blood pressure to the point where it was over 15 people in my room. And they're all staring at me and they're like, how do you feel? And I'm like, Hannah, you think I feel, look at me. You know, we don't understand how you walked in there. So again, I have some very raunchy jokes. They're control mechanisms. So my jokes come out when I'm extremely nervous or if I'm in extreme pain. And based on how much either is, the worse my jokes get. So it's like, we don't understand how you even walked in. I'm like, I did, you guys wheelchaired me in, and what, you there? You know, so anyway.
Your family must have been beyond worried.
No one knew at the time when I was in the hospital because I didn't think it was a big deal. Anyway, to make the story shorter, I signed a consent to be put under because they had to do what's called blood clot busters. I don't even remember signing anything. I don't remember having a conversation with the doctors because the first thing they said is like, first we got to get you out of pain. From there, I'm in La La Land. I don't remember anything.
Was it excruciating pain? Unbearable?
Yeah. So the surgery was supposed to be a couple of hours. I was supposed to be out for 3 hours. I ended up being in a coma for over 10 days. My kidney failed. So they were worried because they have to put this dye in me to be able to see where the blood clots are that caused my kidney to fail, and I started turning gray from what they told me. So the doctor's like, hey, we gotta hurry up and take his leg off or else he's gonna die. And my family now are there. This is days after. And they're fighting with the doctors because my family know me, and they're like, listen, you can't take his leg. You know, he needs to green light that. And they're like, listen, if you wait, he's going to lose his kidney, he's going to be on the dialysis, and he's going to lose his leg anyway. So they were fighting, like, listen, you don't know Flex. If you take his leg while he's asleep, when you wake up, all of us are going to pay hell for it, you know. Anyway, so they do this surgery where they put cadaver arteries in my both sides of my leg, and they thought it was going to work, and it did work for a couple of days. It ended up failing. I just had an epiphany that I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to be walking too much longer. It was just something that hit me. Through that course, that 5-month course, I probably went to the emergency room over 100 times, just in pure pain. And it got to the point where they knew me so well, they're like, just come in, Flex, when your pain is too bad, we'll knock you out, and you know, when you wake up, you can go home. And it was one time I went in, it was a different doctor in an emergency room, and sorry for being so long-winded. It was a different doctor, and he goes, you know, Flex, it's nothing else we can do for you. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? You know, how could you say that to me? He goes, there's nothing else we can do for you until that time comes. And he left that open. I'm like, well, that time comes, what time? He goes, it's going to be really difficult for me to say. And he started sobbing. So of course I started sobbing. I'm like, you know, what are you about to say? The entire emergency team came in the room and they're all sobbing. It's like, this is the hardest news to tell you because we know who you are. We know what you achieved. And for us to tell you this is going to be harder than anybody else, but there's nothing else we can do for you until that time comes that we take your leg. So I lost it, of course, but you know, also it was very comforting because it was a thought that I was having for months, and it just really helped me to start accepting that I'm going to lose my leg one day. So I really started accepting it. It was probably a week later, I got rushed back into the hospital, and just pain, I couldn't believe it. And they did an ultrasound. The right side was 100% blocked, and the left side was 90% blocked. And the lady doctor walked into my emergency room. She goes, you know, we're there, Flex. I'm like, okay. She goes, we're there. I said, just take it, you know, just take it. And she goes, you sure? I go, what choice do I have? I go, if 90% is blocked, 100% is blocked. If it breaks free, it's going to kill me anyway. What, you know, I just take it. And at that moment, you know, as hard as that is to accept, at that moment, I'm like, listen, everything I've been through, all my surgeries, you know, all the times I've almost died, and sadly, all the times I almost took my own life, you know, coming from where I came from and being able to achieve such, you know, unthinkable things, I'm like, it's no way in the world that God allowed me to do so great. And then go and hide when the worst thing happened. I said, you know, this is a time that I really need to stand up, and I just made a decision. I want to be a spokesperson for amputees around the world. I want to take my global name and any power I have. I want to take my global name and any power I have. I want to start a non-profit organization for amputees because it's so expensive. A friend of mine called me, who's also a friend of Shaquille O'Neal's, and you know, we're acquaintances, but I can't say that me and Shaquille are friends. And Shaquille got on the phone. He goes, "Hey, don't worry about it. Big man got you." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. I'll pay for everything." And that's right when Shaquille had lost his sister, so that kind of, if anybody knows, that time dates that, and I just said, thank you, man. So the thing about it is, you know, at that time, all kind of sponsors came, they wanting to pay for my leg, and just to give you guys an idea, just this part here, that's $15,000, just that part. And this part here has to be changed so many times. This is probably like my 15th version of this because the leg continues to shrink smaller and smaller, and you have to get this done all over again. So that's money and money and money.
When was the operation?
It was towards the end of October. It'll be 2 years coming up here, so it's not even quite 2 years yet.
How have you adapted?
You know, it's just it's difficult. You know, it's difficult. There's just certain things that's, you know, it's borderline, you know, humiliating. You know, if I'm sitting watching TV, you know, like a lot of times if we're watching TV, we'll wait to the last second because there's a good part in the movie, then you run to the bathroom. It's no running for me. So I have to program things out, you know. If I go to the movies, I have to program things out based on how much water I drink and how much I urinate, you know. Everybody has the beautiful comfort of getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Well, I'm in pain 24 hours a day. You know, my pain never goes away. Even as I sit right here, I'm probably right around a 8 or 9 level of pain.
So it didn't resolve that?
No, I thought once I lost my leg that it would be over with. I had no idea that things would increase. So the one surgery they did, it caused extreme neuropathy. So it's like a constant electric storm going on in my leg at all times. You know, if you've nerves, if you understand nerve pain, it's hard for people, but if you ever hit your funny bone, imagine that 1 billion times turned up that never stops. If you ever had your teeth worked on and they hit that nerve, imagine that just never stops. On top of that, I have phantom pain, so literally right now it's like my toes are on fire and they're being pulled backwards. So it's a real mental F when you're having pain in a part of your body that isn't there. You know, so sometimes I just lay in bed and I just sob.
I think how inspiring. I mean, the fact that you've been through so much and you're here telling your story today, because you've gone to a very dark place that a lot of people would struggle in such a short time to come and talk about. And so for that, we have to all commend, have so much respect for you. I mean, you obviously are a huge example to so many people as well. I mean, you say that you've always had low self-esteem. You're incredible.
I truly believe and I understand perception rules over everything. It's true. Perception rules over everything, right? If you're in a relationship with a person and you perceive that they're lying, and let's say for the fact that they're really telling the truth, but you perceive that they're lying, they're a liar, right? We see people all the time who perceive that they look really great when we're looking, I'm like, no, you don't. But their perception overrules. So thank you to everyone, but I understand that's your perception of me. Just like if someone, you know, like these internet bullies making fun of people, that's their perception. You know, if someone walks up to you and call you a wanker, that's their perception of you. It's up to you to either receive that negative energy or throw it away, but it is truly their perception. So, you know, massively, I appreciate everything, you know, but that's not really how it works in my head, you know.